itself is in these kind of fake dog whistle things. There's websites
Mm-hmm.
like obamawatcher.net where, you know what I mean, like people are just like
Mm-hmm.
pumping out kind of, it's like fan fiction really
Mm-hmm.
of like controversial news that isn't actually news. And so there's a lot of them digesting and sharing that in a really aggressive kind of, well, like some of them were having a discussion on Reddit or something that that Barack Obama's mother was a CIA sex operative or
Oh
something,
my
and that
God.
it was a whole like, yeah, that's what I'm saying. So like, and then none of these people have jobs because all the bars are closed, and they can't go throw axes at the local watering hole because everything's shut down. So they retreat online, and they do
Mm-hmm.
that. They vape all their weed now, which I don't think is good for you.
No, it's super potent.
And that's, I think, where all those people died with the
Scrambles your
popcorn
brain.
lungs too, is the counterfeit weed vapes.
I predicted this in April that, if you have this many people out of work or,
Brother,
just,
brother, Zach is totally saying right now, like what I was talking about is, I think there's a reason why the average age of the president keeps getting older, and that's because
mm,
the same generation of people are clinging to power,
well,
and
I think, yeah.
I think they were all poisoned by lead when they were children because lead was in the gasoline, it was in the fucking air, it was in all the
Yeah.
pipes, it was in all the paint.
Bay paint. Yeah.
And then when those people were young adults, that's when those lead poisoned babies became the ones of them that were going to become serial killers became serial killers, and that's why we had all the serial killers in the 70s.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And then now those people are 74 years old and they're holding public office unnecessarily. Do you think there's a reason why we don't cap at like age maximums for public office?
Nah. I mean, ageism. Well, that we do cap it on the short end, with
That's what I'm
the
saying.
youthfulness.
And not that if you're 66 instead of 65 that you can't be president, but can't we just like say thank you for your service? We want you to take the rest of this time off and spend it with your family.
I
Can't we
mean, that's
just
what happened with the Pope. The one before this Pope, he's like, I'm tired. I'm out of here. And they're like, okay, you
okay,
know.
Mr. Pope?
And I think he was 84, but
Like hang it
um,
up.
here's the thing. I think conspiracy. I lost a lot of sleep over listening to Art Bell when he was really in his
That's because you
prime.
were up that late. Isn't that show on at like midnight?
It was, and I hosted a show. I hosted a radio show for a couple of years around that time as well. So um, I think conspiracy theorists, which are more prevalent these days, and it's not even conspiracy theories anymore because they're becoming so popular, and I wouldn't even call them that any longer. They're just alternate facts is just another word for conspiracy. Um, but I think it's okay to say there are a lot of forces out of our control, and there's a lot of people controlling this world that we have no idea. I get that. I get that we'll never know the truth to so many things, including even perhaps, the election. I do believe it was a free and fair election and that Joe Biden did win, clearly. However, I think there's been people controlling who's going to be president probably since the beginning. And it looks good. The democracy looks robust because
I
people are
was thinking
complying
that
with the
today too,
system.
because I get so mad. Like Joe Biden acts like he's coming to save the day, and I voted for him, so I'm okay with it. But
Right.
but if it was really let the best man win, and if it was really all free and fair, he should have run in 2016 instead of letting the DNC rig it for
Mm-hmm.
Hillary and just totally sitting it out. And then he's going to
Mm-hmm.
come back. He could have just stayed in the White House. He could have just stayed there. He could have just
And
moved
yeah, I
bedrooms,
wonder.
and he could have just
Yeah.
fucking and saved and he. I feel like at this point, it's like, yeah, you're coming to take office now when you're much older and much less capable than you were 4 years ago. But you're
Mm-hmm.
also, maybe it's a little too late, buddy. Maybe you could have kept this from happening. But it's like the establishment is so rigged and so
Mm-hmm.
draconian in their
Mm-hmm.
control of things and just
Mm-hmm.
maintaining things, and they use these social issues to get us to argue with each other about stuff, and really they just maintain the status quo of like wealth inequality.
Yeah,
I mean, what the fuck?
and I think that there's a point to that, and I understand that a lot of these, I cannot blame people for wanting to know the truth and for looking at alternate avenues. Unfortunately, um, the average education level of a lot of these folks is not as high as it could be. The you know the his Trump's base, is majority older white men, and a majority of them didn't graduate high school. And so you'd leap to a lot of conclusions, and you'd create this horribly open attempt at a fascist regime. And I'm very, very reticent to look forward to an inauguration. I don't fully believe it's going to happen yet. I'll believe it when it happens, and then Trump hopefully will just fizzle out, and these factions can go back into the woodworks, or the fringe again.
Yeah, I mean, people that say he's going to start his own network and he's gonna do this and do that. Like, at what point do you think any of that's really true?
I don't think he'll have much success, especially if they figure out. I mean, all of these divestments from corporations towards Holly, and just when corporate. This is what's scary. The seams of democracy are knitted together so delicately, with our brand of capitalism, and our hegemonic cycle, I feel like, is completely ending, because you're seeing the economic, like, the corporations are not believing in the system at this point.
Yeah.
And so when they're fractioning off, and it's like tremors, and perhaps the earthquake already happened, but I'm very concerned, that the next 50 years or so are going to be
50?
just yeah.
I'm supposed to retire in 30.
Well, the world's not going to look the same anymore. Like we did the good old days. They're done.
Motherfucker, why did I go to college?
Well, because you had fun, didn't you?
Not in college.
No, you were too serious.
Well, and it was like it was a commuter school, and
I
it
know,
was,
I know.
And we were all trying to be very polite and keep everything super consensual. So it was very, very boring.
Sorry to hear that.
It was okay. I mean, I learned a lot of things. I did a lot of self-parenting.
Yeah, that's a good word for it. I
You know
didn't.
what I
I was
mean?
wild as fuck. I got arrested a bunch of times
Why?
for civil disobedience.
Where?
Good trouble. I was in Seattle for the protests in '99, and then up on Pine Ridge Reservation, and then down in Fort Benning, Georgia.
My new thing is I want to move to Wyoming, and I'm going to lease the back half of my land for fracking.
Oh, well, you know what? They won't like you. The
That's what,
Wyomingians.
that's what RuPaul's doing out there. She's fracking.
Oh, she is. Okay. Well, they might like her. I don't know. Wyoming's ranch people are different.
But
They're
I
a
want
special
to have
form of
pigs.
conservative.
I want to get a couple of pigs. I want to rescue goats.
Sweet.
I want to get a llama.
Get some alpacas. Get
Well,
that pyramid
the real
scheme.
problem is I feel like it's inhumane to just get one of something because it's going to be so lonely. Can you imagine if you thought you were the only donkey?
Oh my God. I knew this blind donkey on a hillside in India, and every day he would cry. He would cry. He cried every day, the blind donkey. Not only was he the only donkey, but he didn't even see that he was the only donkey. Is that not the most tragic? He was blind.
He was blind, and he was a donkey.
And he was so loud. He cried. I mean, like, this type of crying was almost undonkey-like. It was deep. Oh, God. And he would go off on and on and on. It was right next to a temple. There's a temple everywhere. But it was just such a lonely little place for him. And he wasn't even tied up. He just lived there.
So what were you doing in India?
I studied yoga for 4 months.
Where?
And Ayurveda. I studied yoga in Dehradun, and in Pune I studied Ayurveda. And then I was all around different spots.
Wow.
I love that country. But here's the thing.
So you were staying where? Where were you living? Where you were adjacent to the donkey?
In Dehradun, I lived.
But like where? What kind of? Was it a fucking townhouse? Was it a hut? Like what were you living in?
I actually lived in a rather sizable house of people that didn't live there at the time. So it was maybe an Airbnb, you would call it. But
like a sublease situation.
yeah, it was included in the yoga tuition, basically, with the teachers that lived, maybe a half mile away.
Wow. And did you have to carry buckets of water?
No, they had running water. It was the accommodations were really nice. We even
Oh,
had someone to do our laundry and someone to cook for us, which
I
was
didn't
really
mean to
weird.
assume. One time I was chatting up this Indian gentleman on Omegle, and I said, "Oh my God, your English is really nice," and he got really mad because that was like his first language was English, and I didn't
Ay,
know.
ay, ay.
I thought it was insensitive to assume. I didn't. I can't say anything anymore. Am I
Yep.
right? Who's with
Indian
me?
English. Indian English. Um, the thing that's weird about the virus though is that they shut India down with like zero cases, in April. And the amount of people who die of other diseases each day in that country is massive. Um, I don't know. Globally, it's scary what has happened with the pandemic, and I'm sad to see it so successful in the United States. At the same time, the force that the control of shutting things down happened globally has also caused this great concern for me, because the suffering that it caused in India was like people were stranded for weeks and couldn't get home or do their jobs, and we're talking subsistence workers. Like in our country, if you haven't traveled, you can't fathom what kind of subsistence we're talking about. We're not talking about, you know, um, minimum wage jobs. We're talking about really basic stuff.
Yeah.
And so there was this, I guess the phrase that stuck with me was this callous indifference to suffering. Um, and I don't know. I'm sad. The world is a sad place right now. And there don't seem to be very many good answers. Um, but I am hopeful that as Congress starts to look